This is the meeting of the Pioneer Valley Regional School District School Committee. It is Thursday, December 12th. We are meeting at 6 o'clock in the PVRS Library. You can also see this online at bnctv.net. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:05. Everyone is in person. Okay. So are there any citizens' comments? Yes.
I just wanted to say that I attended the Bernardston Elementary School concert and chorus on Tuesday, and it was pretty remarkable. I would say there were over 200 people in the audience, and it was just great to see the fourth graders starting with instrumental music and to have a really well-attended chorus. So,
yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so we do have in our new business a couple presenters. And so before we get to the approval of minutes and the reports, if everyone is okay with it, I'd like to move the field trip approval and the fiscal year 24 audit up. Is that okay with everybody? Yes? Okay. All right, so first we'll have the field trip approval for the middle school trip to New York City.
Everybody. My name's Elizabeth Byrne. I go by Beth. I'm the middle school English teacher. And we're here to really look for your approval and your thumbs up on this incredible experience of taking the middle school to see The Outsiders on Broadway.
And I'm Danica Tominski. I teach 7th and 8th grade math and high school theater, and we are super excited to share what we've been planning so far. So if
Students?
Oh, well, that's on a slide.
Okay.
We have it all prepared. So,
I'm Ziva Andrews, and I'm in 8th grade. Oh, I live in Gill, Massachusetts, and Northfield, Massachusetts.
Hello, I'm Taylor Chase. I am also in 8th grade. I live in Irving in Northfield, Massachusetts.
Hello, I'm Liana Gavin. I'm in 8th grade, and I live in Orange, Massachusetts, and Williamsburg, Massachusetts.
So the first thing we'd like to share with you is our timeline that we're anticipating. So we will load 3 coach buses with all the students from 7th and 8th grade and depart from Pioneer around 1 p.m. We're hoping to stop at the White Plains Mall to have dinner, which we're going to give us about an hour to have dinner, use restrooms, get back on the bus. From the mall, it should take us a little over an hour to get to the Jacobs Theater in New York City. The show begins at 7. It runs about 2.5 hours with a 15-minute intermission. When it's all done, we will get back on the buses and off we come home to Pioneer. Hopefully around 1:30 a.m. return, but these young people are up that late anyway, so it's okay.
We were able to reserve 140 tickets on June 5th, so that's a Thursday evening. All the matinee spots were booked solid. This is a sold-out show. So to get that many tickets for one show, we got that Thursday night. So that was with conversation with Ms. Scanlon Amy, making sure that date worked with MCAS schedules and things like that. So let's talk budget, right? This is a no-joke, big-ticket item. The total cost is about $18,000. It breaks down, and the biggest cost is these 3 coach buses. We want to take the entire 7th and 8th grade. We don't want to leave anybody behind. So that is about a $10,000 cost. Tickets are $50 each. 123 students, 17 chaperones brings us in at just under $7,000. We also need to bring a nurse at approximately $1,000. So total cost, just over $18,000. So this brings us at what we say $143 per student without any fundraising, baseline cost. So let's kind of look at where we're at now. The revenue to date, Danica wrote a grant to the Massachusetts Arts Council. We got it, $5,000. So once that came in, it was like, oh, maybe this trip can actually happen. So previous fundraising through a fall dance brought in $1,000, so we have $6,000, which means we can just about cover those tickets. That bill is due in like beginning of February. Our anticipated revenue, here we go. So family contributions, we are anticipating asking families for $50 each. This doesn't mean if that's above and beyond what you're capable of, we want to know, because every student's going to go if that's what they want to do. We'll make sure that happens. We're anticipating a $2,000 donation for the Kiwanis Club of Bernardston. 2 more dances are coming down the pike. These kids love to go to their dances. They love to buy snacks. So that's coming in another $1,500. We've got a great fundraiser, going on right now with Hillside Pizza, where every gift certificate we get $7 from that we sell. Bernardston Craft Fair, we had 2 students sell glitter tattoos, and they brought in $100 for us, so it was lovely. And we're anticipating PVRS has a $1,000 field trip budget that they've given us a heads up could come our way. Rounding out some extra donations. Anytime we're doing these fundraisers, we're getting like at the dances, oh, hey, here's another $20, as parents when they're coming in. Or the Hillside, we're getting like, listen, here's another $50. So these are starting to come in. And I imagine we could get even more than that. That's a conservative estimate. So surprisingly, when you start at $18,000, it sounds like almost an impossible task, and we're chipping away at it.
All 7th and 8th grade students read The Outsiders, a 1967 novel by S.E. Hinton, and watched the 1983 film version directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Students then write literary analysis, film reviews, and text-to-film comparisons. These assignments, as well as the proposed trip, align with MA curriculum frameworks, in particular the reading standards for literature integration of knowledge and ideas. The Outsiders book and movie were both written decades ago, so obviously things were different than they are now. But one of the things that this musical offers is seeing those things play out. I mean, seeing this play can show students, in person, how normal things in the 1960s are shown in the 2020s. Theater also is an amazing way to learn to read emotions. Also, hearing about how the conflicts in The Outsiders affects other people is a new view on the story. So going to see this musical is not just fun, but also extremely educational.
What students are saying?
I want to see how the classic novel was updated and reimagined years later. The trip would be a big deal for all of us. It's a community bonding experience.
We as middle school students understand that this is a very costly trip, but we are also extremely grateful to have the opportunity provided to us. Not only will it be able to give us lifelong memories to share with our classmates, peers, and friends, but it will also be able to help connect the 7th and 8th grade classes. We've all read The Outsiders as a book, and we've all watched the movies, and it will be incredible to be able to say that we've all watched it in New York City on Broadway, which would be an extremely incredible opportunity for us to have, because New York is a very well-known place, with Broadway is a very well-known theater production, which is an incredible thing for us to be able to go to as a rural school, which is an experience of a lifetime.
What else are students saying? Going to NYC for a field trip would give students that don't travel a chance to see different states and what they're like. Imagine being able to tell our kids, if we choose to have them, when I was in 7th grade, our amazing school let us see a Tony Award-winning Broadway musical.
I went to elementary school in Greenfield, and before I came here, I'm not gonna lie, I was really nervous because I hadn't heard the best things about this school. But then I came here and I realized how great school this was, or is, and how much potential it has to be a school more people want to come to. This trip will be a huge morale boost for middle school, and it will also show the community what we are capable of and who we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have one more slide. Yeah. So our takeaways: educational value, arts integration, memory making, and community building, and broadening our horizons. That's what we're going for. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Good job. All right. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I really appreciate all of you taking the time to come and being brave enough to present to us and tell us your thoughts about this trip. It sounds wonderful and amazing. I think you did a really good job of convincing me if I hadn't already thought this was a great idea. So thank you. And I also appreciate the careful budget planning. It's great to see that you've thought through all of the pieces, and looking at all of that is helpful.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Sure.
Just come up to the
Yeah,
mic.
come
Do I have to sit here? Or
No, you can
Okay.
stand there.
So before the meeting, I got a chance to watch the kids practicing in Beth's room, and Ziva had a question that she didn't, I guess she cut from the script, but it was a good question. She asked, how many people got to go on a trip outside of their state in middle school? And I got to go on a trip outside of my state middle school. I also went to a really rural middle school, and in 8th grade, we went to Rhode Island. And on that trip to Rhode Island, one of my classmates went into the water and came out of the water and said, "It's salty." And I share that because I think we have all sorts of expectations about what kids are going to learn on trips. And then they go on trips and they learn amazing and crucially important things about our world that they didn't know. So I'm really excited that Beth and Danica and the students are willing to be so ambitious in what they want to do. And I really hope they get to go.
Yeah. So I just have a question about family contributions. So it would be $50 per family for the student to go, and on top of that, dinner cost. Or you think so it's not just 50 that we are okay. And so I don't know if yeah, and go ahead.
Yeah, I would say too, depending on the fundraising, if we're
Right.
able to fundraise more,
Yep.
we're gonna spread that love, right?
Yeah.
That's not something
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
hold in our tank. And also, we are looking at doing a payment plan so that families can pay $10 a month.
Yep.
So it's not such a big hit.
Awesome. That's a great idea. Okay. Awesome. Yeah.
Kids can bring food. There's no requirement that
Okay.
they eat at the mall. They can bring a bag dinner, and that's totally fine.
Great. Awesome. Yeah.
We have a letter prepared to go out to families,
Okay.
kind of outlining some of this.
Yeah.
That we didn't want to overstep and send that before this meeting happened, and we
Yeah.
were, that it was, we were on the same page. So
Yeah.
that's been kind of vetted in a couple places. But,
Great.
no, definitely know we're thinking about that.
Great. Yeah. I just want to make sure that this is accessible to everybody, right? Yeah. Okay.
And
Awesome.
that's what the letter tries to make really clear.
Yeah.
And so we've got like check boxes for, if, tell us what you need, so we can start anticipating those costs.
Awesome. Great. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question. Also a comment. Thank you so much for putting this together. My daughter is in middle school and is very excited.
Yeah.
And will you be having chaperones? It's a legitimate question. How many? That's a lot of kids. Will you
Yes.
need chaperones?
Yes, I mean, I think we're planning on 17 chaperones.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
don't, I mean, that allows about 7 to 8 students per adult. I don't want more kids in a group than that.
Okay.
In a
sounds
food
nice.
court, and in, on the, even if it's like the bus to the theater and back, I'm not losing
Yeah.
track of anybody. So,
That's a great reason.
yes, so we need chaperones. That involves, for parents, that involves quite a lot. That involves a Corey and fingerprints, so,
Yeah.
those are steps along the way too.
Okay. Great. Cool. All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the middle school field trip to New York City on June 5th, 2025.
Second?
Second? Yes.
Nicely
Nice.
done.
Very good. Okay. All right. So, Melissa, you can start the voting.
Melissa Osborne, Northfield, yes.
Okay.
Stephanie Arroyo, yes.
Raina Dastu, yes. And we do have a member online.
Oh, we do.
Stephen Martin, yes.
Thank you, Steve.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hi, Steve.
Sorry to be late.
No worries.
And Melissa Gary, yes. Okay.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you.
That's a
That's a
yes. Yay, congratulations.
Nice job.
Nicely done, everybody.
done.
And
Yes.
Mrs. Scanlon, Amy, am I correct that there may be in the works yet another out-of-state trip being planned for next fall?
There may be in the works, and are you all 8th graders? Yes, so there may be in the works an additional, well, there is in the works, an additional out-of-state trip next fall, should I say,
Go ahead, do it.
to take our 9th grade class to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
It is a wonderful opportunity for students. They've been taking civics, they're all in civics right now, to get to see the Capitol and to get to really see what our tax dollars are creating and understand how government kind of looks at action.
Exciting.
Beautiful.
That's
Thank you. Thank you
Great.
for organizing
Thank you.
these opportunities.
All right.
Cool.
Nice
Thank
job.
you.
Yeah. Okay. So next we have Tom Scanlon from Scanlon and Associates with our fiscal year 24 audit.
Just before Tom presents, is it too late to mention that geographically the Bronx is right on the way between here and New York City? So, you know,
Is that a baseball?
you could stop and have dinner at Yankee Stadium or just catch a game and just.
Can I say that last year, I thought every grade got $1,000 for a field trip. And they've only incorporated 1,000, and it's 7th and 8th grade, and that would
should be-
be considered
There were-
past practice.
Last year, we discussed many times, was a one-time funding situation with the Yellow School Bus Project. So Mrs. Scanlon, Amy has talked with me and Mr. Burns about funding. Thank you, Mrs. Brennan, for advocating for our students.
All right, Jack. Okay.
This is
Hi.
going to be exciting as for those who don't know me, I'm Tom Scanlon. I'm the managing.
Pull it closer to you, Tom. Yeah, it's got to be really close. There you go.
Sounds good. I can shout out a tune later too. So my name's Tom Scanlon. I'm the managing partner at Scanlon Associates. This is the 3rd year that we've done the audit, 22, 23, 24. The audit went great. As you can see, I'm usually here when it's warm out. I had to bring in my jacket today. So we're very early, which is good. This was the plan. You're back on track. You know, we gave no significant adjustments to the general ledger. We had no disagreements with management. It's actually a nice, clean audit. And when you look at your balance sheet, so our primary goal as the auditor is we're opining on your financial statements, and that's our #1 goal. And as we look at your financial statements, we address risk and where our testing goes. And so when you look at your balance sheet, I don't really want to walk you through a balance sheet. I don't want to bore you tonight. But as you look at balance sheet, you see your largest asset is your cash. So we put a lot of emphasis on cash reconciliations, making sure they're timely, making sure you have controls in place. For instance, as you sign a warrant, that's a control. Making sure that all the expenses are going to the right fund. So as an auditor, and we look at your financials, is when a revenue comes in or expenditure come in, is it going to the right fund? As you know, you probably get your E&D certification. There's a lot of emphasis on that. You look forward to seeing what the number is. And again, that's your general fund. So there should be no grant revenue being part of ED. There should be no grant expenditures part of E&D. And that's the risk where we come in and say, okay, what is going to the general fund? And you're basically 3 revenues in the general fund are your assessments to your towns. We want to make sure they're going there and not going to a special revenue fund. They're not being diverted. Your Chapter 70 money, your state aid, that should be going to the general fund, the unrestricted piece. Make sure that's going there. And then your tuition that you're billing out. And obviously investment income, but that's kind of like the 4th down. And as we look at your balance sheet and your financial statements, we want to make sure there's all in the right buckets. If you look at them and you look out in your non-major funds, which is your grants, again, if you get a Title I grant, we want to see that revenue go into that fund, and then the Title I expenditures go in there. And your grants should be clearing out. As you draw money down, you're spending them. So when we look at your financial statements, you're pretty boring. You don't have a lot of deficits. You don't have any deficits. So that's all good, and that kind of gives you proof that Jordan's kind of doing his job. And also, when another reflection is when's E&D being certified? You're, I think it was September. Your end of year report's being submitted when we're here. So everything is going smoothly. But I don't want that to be an indication that no one's doing anything and everything's taken for granted. That we are checking. Jordan is doing things. So, but it's good. Your financial statements are boring, which is great. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions on what we do, what areas we kind of look at. I don't know. I don't want to bore you too much of what an auditor does, You have a question? Oh.
No, I scanned through the document real quick, and I was just looking for things like things that stood out, right?
Yep.
Something that would be alarming or something to notice, and I didn't.
Yeah, so you have three documents you should have got. You should have got your financial statements, which is the big thick thing with all the numbers in there. Even though we prepare them, governmental financial statements are crazy. There's actually 3 sets of financial statements in there. Who uses those? Or if you go into the bond market, they're going to be using them. DOR uses these. Grant awarding agencies will look at these. You got a clean opinion, which is great. So they're going to give you a tick of the box, say good job. Your second document should be your single audit, and that is your federal expenditures. Since you spent over $750,000 in federal expenditures, you have to have a specific type of audit on those. Again, you had no findings on there, very clean. Again, your grant management, I think, is very sound and excellent. And then the third document, you should have got a letter to governance. That kind of takes place of the management letter that you've seen in past years. It's a different, our standards had changed, and we had to communicate certain things to you, and it's in that letter. Then I think on the second page, halfway down, you'll see some items we discussed with management, which are very minor. Student activity audits in compliance with DESE. 2 new GASBs, which are for your financial statements, which are pretty boring. Compensated absences and leases. That's more of a Jordan thing, but very minor. Yeah, there's nothing. You're not seeing anything in there like lack of cash reconciliations, deficit accounts, expenditures being paid out, not on a warrant. You're not seeing any of those things in there. Your financial reporting is very sound and excellent. And again, that's something you should be proud of.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Boring is good.
Yeah, boring.
Yes,
I was just
we
going to
like-
say that. Boring is good.
we like boring.
Yeah. And findings was the word I was looking for. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah,
I was
correct.
looking, when I was scanning, I was looking for some finding, and it was.
Yeah, when you have to go looking for that kind of tells you there's probably nothing major.
Right,
If there was something going on, you'd see it right out, glaring right at you, significant deficiency, in bold. Again, you have a nice school district. As much good things as I'm saying about your financial, one of the things that the young student you had here who said, she was scared to come here, and that speaks volumes more than what I'm saying. Because that's what a school district is all about. And the finances kind of sit over here boring. But like I said, you've come a long way, and can't say enough good things. I don't get to say that too often.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You say it. I'm writing everything down. So I got the good quotes.
I've got plenty of clients too where it doesn't.
Yeah.
So
Good.
It's nice to come to meetings like this. The last 3 years have been. So.
Great.
And hopefully I come back in the cold again.
Yeah. Right.
Right, Jordan?
Exactly, yeah. Keep it on course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions throughout the year, if something pops up, budget questions or, new grants come about, things are constantly changing out there in the finance world. Or if there's just an area of concern you have and you want us to look at during the audit, we're concentrating on your primary revenue sources, like your state aid, your assessments, your grants. But like the field trip, that's kind of in that secondary class of revenue where we're doing more analytical on that. You know, where we're looking to see, did you spend out more than you took in, and their deficits? If you're having the same program year after year and you're collecting $12,000 a year, let's say for the past 5 years, and then in year 6 you're collecting 2, well, we're probably going to look at that area. You know, but there might be a reason for it. So, like that secondary revenue, you get some concerns, don't hesitate to reach out. Or if there's a specific area of expenditures, I'm an email away. Sometimes it's been hard to get a hold of me the past 3 months, but yeah.
I do have so first of all, I want to say thank you for this being so timely. You know, this is FY24 audit, and FY24 ended. We're still in 2024, so I think this is great. I really appreciate the timeliness of this, and I know that's something that Jordan has been working hard to do, and and I appreciate you partnering with us on that. The other thing, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do wanted to ask, since we have you here, do you have any advice for school committee members who, when we're looking at the warrants, what we should, if there's anything that you can highlight that we should be looking for when we're reviewing those?
Yeah, one kind of, I usually say, kind of just common sense type of, like every expense should have an invoice behind it. That's one. So if something's on the warrant and there's no invoice, then I would pull it. And anything that looks odd, like, you know, I've been working on a thing now where cat food is being bought, like a lot of cat food. That probably should pull out to you.
That might be a flag.
The common sense type of thing, spending, you know, that the big thing is making sure there's an invoice back to everything and things look appropriate. Like, you know, a car battery's not being charged at school lunch. Those type of things. Probably don't expect you to know, like, the fund structure where things are, you know, what the Title I grant, what's that, because you got to rely upon your personnel doing the job. But yeah, just common sense reviewing,
looking for
making sure there's an invoice that's backing up all those expenses, and they seem appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's helpful.
And we are the Panthers, so if we bought a ton of cat food, it would be kind of normal.
Yeah, I didn't put 2 and 2 together on that. But
Something to tell us about that mascot.
And Tom and I were speaking prior to the meeting, and we were saying it'd probably be a good idea if you all were interested. I know this will take coordination, but to set up even like an hour, you know, to talk specifically about, you know, how to review the warrant, or if you had questions of how to do it better. And Tom was amenable to setting up time.
Yes, great.
Yeah, like what to look for, like when Jordan gives you like the budget versus actual or financial statement, like what to look for on them. Yeah, I could get together for an hour or so. And
Great. Awesome. Yeah.
And then that's, everyone have a good holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you
too.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the holiday.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can jump back in to the approval of minutes from November 14th and November 20th.
So real quick, just on my name, it's the English, SNELL, not the German.
Have I been spelling it wrong all along?
No, but these two are wrong.
These two are.
Yeah, it's okay. I've rarely seen that here in New England, so that's cool.
Yep. I have one on November 14th, page 2, under the adjournment, on a motion by Kelton and I'm assuming Gary.
Oh, yeah.
Up a little higher on that same side, the big paragraph that begins with the DESE Foundation Enrollment Method. Ann, nice job capturing how foundation enrollment, what comprises it. Nicely done. You got that perfectly. At the end of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line, it says Matteo or Matteo. It's DiMatteo, D-I. You're welcome.
I didn't capture all the names of the various attending
Speakers.
because they didn't all identify
Yep.
themselves. So if anybody would like to be added to it, they should let me know.
Okay.
I know Ginger was there from Leiden Finance Committee, but I only know that because I bumped into her in the coffee shop and we talked about,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
I can add her, but if there's anybody else that needs to be added, hopefully people can let me know.
Anything else on that one? No? Okay. So on to November 20th. I didn't see anything when I was reviewing it.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended for November 14th, 2024 and November 20th, 2024.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Okay. Melissa?
Melissa Osborne, yes.
Stephanie Arroyo, yes.
Raina Dastu, yes. Go ahead.
Stephen Martin, yes.
Melissa Gary, yes. Okay, so minutes are done. All right, reports. So for the chair report, I don't have much at all, but I will say, like Anne shared, I went to the Bernardston Elementary School concert, the winter concert. Both my children went through Bernardston Elementary School, and this was my first concert I ever went to because they had never been in band. So out of my many years there, the place was packed. The house was packed. And so it's always really nice to see the investment that we make on budget decisions here actually come to fruition in the performances, with having chorus back and having the first year band and second year band, and the improvement between the first year and the second year. And so it was a great event, and I was happy to go. So,
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
Northfield Elementary's was today.
Okay.
And it was packed,
Yeah.
standing up against the wall, every seat full, and it was the same. And it was interesting. Usually when I was growing up, and the music teacher pointed this out too, you had the band kids and the chorus kids,
Yeah.
and almost all of the band kids were also in the chorus.
Yeah.
And they actually thanked Patricia and the school board in the at the end of the concert for being able to provide that.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah, thank you. Okay, superintendent?
What a great concert. I love that phrase. The room was packed. It was made me feel proud. Made me feel happy for the families, happy for kids. It was what public education is supposed to be. So well done all around. Let's name our music staff. Lynette Snedeker, educator and farmer extraordinaire, and Stephanie Barstow, both of whom are exceptional music teachers. Thank you. Let's see. I put in my new. I tried out the Parent Square format for the district update newsletter. Not sure what I think, but I will keep giving it a try. I mentioned that we did our safety drills. Those went very well. I felt proud in all three buildings of how things went. We are practicing. Good job. And that made me think, and I spoke with Melissa to check if it would be okay. Last year we had an executive session to provide an update on our safety and security improvements, and I wondered if our new members might like to meet with me. And I think Michelle Girusso was not able to be at that meeting, so I'll reach out to Michelle, and maybe we could do it virtually, but because I think you should know what is happening. Okay, I'll do that. The superintendent's awards for the Franklin County students last week?
Last Thursday.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Amelia Fowler Shaw, wonderful recipient. That event always makes me, I keep saying it, feel like a schmuck, because these kids have resumes that are this long. They've done this, they've done that, and I was not like that in high school. So great students. Winter sports are about to start. And how beautiful the celebration of life for Mr. Bill Messer. That took place a week ago, a
2
week
weeks
or
ago.
2 weeks ago. What a moving gathering of this community to honor and celebrate a life well lived, a life of service, many types of service. It was an honor for the school district to be able to host that celebration of life here. So thank you to Gretchen Licata and everyone who made that possible. And that's it for me.
Great, thank you. Okay, on to the Director of Finance reports.
All right.
I have a question. This is just, the student report is not on the agenda tonight. And
My understanding is there's not a report tonight.
Oh, okay.
No. Yeah, we were. Yeah. Thank you for checking in. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now that I have Tom's permission to keep everything boring, I can't wait to continue in that role of making things boring. So, expenditure report. We spent $5,467,477.16, and that number isn't particularly important, but overall, I anticipate that our general fund expenditures will be pretty close to what we budgeted, $19,000 less than budgeted. I'm going out of order, but our last meeting we did a lot of budget transfers, and there are still some negative balances, but some of that is dealing with encumbrances that still need to be refined. So there might be some transfers in the future, but I'm trying to keep it to a minimum throughout the year. So in terms of the expenditure, everything's going along as we would expect. There's a little more special needs transportation than we had originally anticipated, but that's related to specific students coming to us and needing specialized transportation. That happens. Revenues, similar story. A little over $6 million has been received thus far in the year. We received about 41.59% of the budget through 5 months, and 5 months represents 41.67% of the fiscal year. And bringing those numbers up because what that's saying is we're right on course, right? Revenue's coming in as it should, and in relation both timing and what we budgeted. So my anticipation is we will receive slightly less than we budgeted, so about $21,000 less than we budget. So essentially the budget will be in balance. It looks like possibly out of balance by $2,000, but we always have the option to use more offsets, revolving funds or grants to eliminate that deficit. So in terms of overall the expenditures against the revenues, things are moving along as they should, and I think it's a tight budget, but everything's going as we anticipated. So that is good, and I think it's good to have generally a tight budget and close to what we anticipated, because that allows us to put more money into programming rather than creating this huge cushion for us in budgeting. So we've tried to gradually tighten up the budget. We'll see if it got too tight, but I think it's pretty good, which allows us to again just actually put more money into student-facing initiatives. Lunch report. So now is the school year is started, and we're having more days in the month. Obviously, Thanksgiving made November a little bit shorter, but we're having closer to 20 days in the month, so we have operating profit in the month of November of $7,362.58. So through November 30th, we still have an operating loss, but I think that'll resolve itself come spring. Once you get into spring, obviously you have the February and April breaks, but January, March, May have a lot of operating days, which is the big variable that will ultimately lead to profitability. If you have 20, 21 days in a month, we're going to generally make money. And obviously the goal in food service really is to break even, right? We have fund balance, so we don't want to lose a ton of money, but we're hoping to provide as much service as we possibly can, given the cost of the meals, and put as much back into the program as we can, because we want to provide really nutritious meals with choice for our students. So I think that's probably where we're going to end up, a little pretty close to break even, maybe a small, quote unquote profit, and we need to also. There's a limit on how much fund balance we can have, and so we did the freezer project, but we're not really in a position where we need to sock away a ton more fund balance, because we'll be up against the actual maximum that we're allowed. So again, everything's going well as we anticipated. No exciting news, but again, echoing what Tom said, boring is good. So I'm your perfect person. And right, so that's that. One thing Tom didn't mention, I mean, not a big thing, but just the end of the year report, the end of the year filing that we provide to DESE, that's also been completed and audited, and similar to the other stuff Tom talked about, there were no findings, so that's good as well. So that's done and dusted. So the great thing is, in terms of auditing and filings, everything is done, audited, been looked at. So FY24 is in the books completely. So that's good.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Thank you. No transfers.
No transfers.
Response to the warrant question?
Oh, of course. That's great. Yes. So we had a question, and I think I should read it aloud, right?
Sure. Yeah.
That way everybody will be on the same page. So we had a, should I say it's from? Is that
Yeah,
appropriate?
that's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So Michelle Girusso had a question about the warrant. Is perfectly appropriate, right? I think everybody probably knows the process for asking questions, but it gets directed through the chair, Patricia, back to me, and then I answer the question. This one we didn't have time to do in that fashion, so we're bringing it publicly so that everybody can hear the response. So
I think we decided, the question came in after the warrant had been signed.
This was a follow-up.
This was a follow-up.
This was her follow-up
Right.
question.
So it was a decision to share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Good. So Michelle had a follow-up question regarding an amount of money that was returned to DESE Grants Management. Good. Why is this being sent back almost 4 years later? We have had audits since then. In the town world, each year grants are outstanding until fully reconciled. All deliverables are met, etc., and the money is fully accounted for. If open, it means it is outstanding and the amount goes against the town's free cash. Free cash is the same as excess and deficiency for the schools. A $46,620 amount versus $4,796 is a huge difference. I don't understand why this is just being reconciled now. Did this go against E&D each year? How long was the grant for? Okay, so I will answer the questions first. So did it go against E&D this year? So Tom did a really good job of explaining fund accounting. So excess and deficiency is just the general fund. This is a grant. So it didn't go against E&D because E&D is the amount of excess or deficiency specific to the general fund. And this is a grant. So no, it did not go against E&D in any year because it is a grant. The grant was for a was for a period of 2 years. So that's that in terms of the grant. And now I would like to provide a little more context. So what happened? So when you finish a grant, finish spending it, you file something called an FR1. It's just a final cost report. Another way to, so basically what you're telling DESE is we're done. This grant's done. And at the time, it was in November of 2021. We were all so much younger. And I wasn't working here at the time. And TMS was handling, the financial piece. And so what happened is one of the representatives of TMS filed the FR1 in November of 2021. And when you file the FR1, you go through the whole thing. And then at the last screen, what it would have said is, hey, you have a surplus. And I know Tom also mentioned surplus and deficit, right? And deficits are a big problem. what he didn't mention is surpluses, because, I mean, you got to pay them back, but they're not a problem in that sense, right? Because the deficit would be a problem, because what you'd be doing is, oh, I'm going to put all, it'd be kind of like a problem, because it'd be like a company who's like, I'm going to put all my losses with this company or on a grant, right? But the problem is, if you don't have the money to cover it, it all comes back to the general fund, and you could have this big problem. What this was a surplus, and it's a problem because it's wrong, but it's certainly not a dangerous problem in terms of your financial wherewithal or financial safety or solvency. But so what happened? So they followed the FR1 in November of 2021, but the other TMS colleagues were unaware of this, apparently, because what they did is they kept spending on the grant. So, right, so you've given DESE, you've said it's over, but then an other party of TMS continued spending. So there wasn't 46,000, and I should be clear, when you get to the last screen, it tells you you need to write a check to DESE for $46,620. So that was never done. But people kept spending, worsening the problem in a way. And so ultimately they spent it down to where instead of $46,620 left, there was $4,795.86 left. Okay, so that's, I know, $40,000. I know, this is not a small amount. Back in 2021, you could have bought a car for that. So there's $40,000 difference, right? And so when we were filing E&D, we were looking at it and said, wow, this grant from 2021 has a surplus, a lot, 46,000. Well, actually on the book. So this is the interesting part, right? It was a $4,795.86 surplus, which still is a lot. Like, why do you have a surplus? And so we researched it and came to this conclusion. And the reason you wouldn't necessarily look at that as the first thing is Tom said, stuff like deficits. Like that's an immediate problem. Any of the problems you're looking at the end of the year, it's kind of a triage, right? You're looking at which problems could cause us future difficulties, which problems could, imperil us in the future. Whereas, not to be mean, but, especially after TMS, there were some problems, and we wanted to address the most pressing that could, continue to cause us problems or get worse if we didn't address them. So this wasn't at the top of the list. But this year we were diving deeper, right? Each year you want to get better and take a deeper dive into your financials. And so we looked at it and said, yep, I got all the information and said, okay, I see the problem. I reached out to DESE and said, hey, look, this FR1 was filed incorrectly. Can you please open it back up? Because had we not done that, the alternative, what we, by all rights, based on what had been filed with DESE, we should have sent him a $46,620 check. But I said, I don't want to do that. What can we do here? And they said, hey, look, we get it. This is a special circumstance. The DESE representative directed me to another person. We got it worked out, reopened the FR1, and then I filed a new one that was appropriate, $4,795.86. And that is, and after we did all that, that's why it's coming, just now, because, again, it was kind of priority. Now I know I have to write a $4,700 check, but first I wanted to finish the end of the report, certify excess and deficiency, get the audit complete, because, we owe the money, but we can kind of do it anytime. So now we've done that. This grant is now closed out and actually appropriately closed out based on the amount of money we spent. So, long story short, thank you for the question, because what I'd like to say is, hey, we just saved $40,000 by doing this. So the $4,795 is kind of the small part. The big story is there was a big mistake, and we fixed it. And I think we dealt with it timely in the sense that that mistake, although a surplus, it wasn't harming us. It wasn't misrepresenting our financials year over year. It wasn't misrepresenting our excess and deficiency. But, every year we're going to continue to try to, go even deeper. And although Tom says our financials are boring, we want to make them even more boring. So that's our goal. Any questions about the question or the response?
So just to clarify, so the continued spending, what it was for grant appropriate, or things that should have been covered, but would have been covered by the grant, just outside of the time frame of when the grant.
It was actually during the performance period, so the grant was still open. It was just closed. So, and that's kind of why, I guess, why I don't want to speak for every district, but why you might want a single person in control of your general ledger.
Mhm.
So as it is now, the person, me, who would do the FR1 is also the person who controls the general ledger and what expenses go where. So it would never, I mean, unless I had like it would, maybe it's not, a kind of a lapse, right? You would know, okay, I already closed that out. Spending's done, and you wouldn't allow, for example, I wouldn't ever approve another purchase order to that grant. I'd say, well, no, that's closed and put it to a different place. But when you have multiple people, kind of a collaborative group instead of a person, what can happen is not everybody communicated. So because there's no specific like flag in your accounting system, oh, an FR1's been done, right? Like that's DESI versus your accounting system. So unless you have a single person, and that's why, like, in the audit, they're like, hey, who's in control of the general ledger? It should be one person. And that one person should be, I guess fundamentally my responsibility is to control that and make sure stuff like that doesn't happen because it causes big problems.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you. Great.
Thank you, Jordan.
Okay, so on to subcommittees. Letter C on our agenda. So thank you for everyone for sending me your subcommittee choices. What I did is I looked at everyone's preferences and tried to put everyone on only 2 subcommittees. Typically, we have 3 subcommittees, but on top of our regular meetings and having subcommittee meetings, there's some subcommittees that will meet intensely for a short amount of time, like budget, and then kind of take a little bit of a break. Or there's other subcommittees that only pop up here and there. And so I tried to spread people out according to what their interests were. If there are people who didn't necessarily get a subcommittee that they want to be on, as long as we keep it to 3 members per subcommittee, then we're within the realm that it's a subcommittee that would work. So for budget, I have Michelle, Stephanie, and Steven. For policy, I have Gretchen, Raina, and Melissa Osborne. Teaching and learning, I have Melissa and Steven. For district agreement and community relations, I have Raina and Stephanie. And then for collective bargaining and personnel, I have Gretchen and Michelle. So has everyone had a chance to look at this? Did it settle okay? Are they okay with how they ended up? Yeah? Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Melissa. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem, Steve. So one of the things that we do need to kind of get going, and I don't want to spend time right now, but I would like to spend time right after our meeting. So we have an executive session. We're going to adjourn after that. But we need to get a collective bargaining and personnel meeting on the books. We need to get a budget meeting on the books, a policy meeting, and district agreement and community relations. So I'm hoping that after the meeting, we can just spend a couple minutes and everyone can get together and we can just schedule these meetings. Okay.
I think the school committee needs to approve the subcommittees.
Okay.
And we need to have chairs of subcommittees.
Yeah, so typically, thank you for that. So we can take a motion to approve the subcommittees as they are. How we have done it in past practice is when the subcommittees get together, they kind of talk about who is going to be chair, and then I appoint who would be chair for that subcommittee. So the subcommittees will discuss that, and then we can appoint the chairs. Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion to accept the subcommittees as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept the subcommittees as presented.
Okay, as well. Okay. So
Do you want to second that, Steve?
Thank you. Yes, gladly. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Any further discussion?
I just want to say a comment that I think having 2 subcommittees makes things more manageable. Three gets a little unwieldy.
Mhm.
Have it time been on 4, and it's a lot. So
Yeah.
they're smaller subcommittees, but it's also that's where a lot of the work happens. So it's nice to have a more limited scope. So great.
Okay. All right. Melissa?
Melissa Osborne, yes.
Stephanie Arroyo, yes.
Raina Dastu, yes.
Stephen Martin, yes.
And Melissa Gary, yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. We can make those schedules after. Okay, so next we have the district strategic plan. So for those of us who were on the committee back in September, we had talked about really it's time for us to come up with a district strategic plan. And we wanted to wait until after the elections to see what our school committee was going to look like and how we were going to move forward. At that time, we talked about looking at a working group, working with the superintendent. So one of the things that we do as chair is I meet with Superintendent Kinsella and we go over what are our tasks, what is the meeting agenda, and so forth. And when I was looking at everything that we're doing as a school committee, for us to really design and implement our own district strategic plan is a real big project. And so what would it look like if we explored hiring a consultant who does this as a job and can come work with us as a school committee and working groups and help us design our strategic plan? And so what I'm looking for tonight is looking at possibly directing and asking Superintendent Kinsella to look at what would that cost look like. You know, could we interview and look at some vendors, help us come up with that. And my other question is to Jordan, do we have flexibility within our budget to do this?
We'll see. See how much it costs.
Okay, so fair. That's fair, right? Like, I am not looking to spend. What I'm looking, though, is to get us on the path of having a district strategic plan,
Sounds smart.
and seeing if this is doable. So,
Great. Yeah, I'm happy to work with Patricia to investigate it. It sounds like a good undertaking.
okay. Does anyone have any questions or?
I know in the sample timeline that was presented to us previously, it's a big task, and there are other things in the works that need the administration's time and attention, and that was part of the decision to kind of put off that decision,
Right.
The decision to put off the decision, I think I for one would be very curious to know what it would cost, what the options are in terms of vendors out there. And I know we had a very positive experience for the district planning committee to do the facilities master planning, and that was money well spent. I felt we got a lot out of that investment, and so I think it makes sense to look at what our options are, so we can make a choice about how we're going to proceed with that.
Anything else? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So do we have? We don't have a vote. So
it's just a directive.
so I guess the directive would be, please.
Okay.
Could you move forward with this, and then report back at the January 23rd.
Yep.
Meeting.
Happy to.
For some
Thank you.
research. Okay. I would love to get our district strategic plan going and have
Be great.
a direction would be phenomenal. Okay, great.
Great.
Okay. Next, Six-Town Regionalization Planning Board requests to use the district's attorney. So we received an email from, well, it was from our attorney, that the Six-Town Regionalization Planning Board had asked if he would provide legal services to the Six-Town Regional Board on the district's behalf, to come up with what it would look like and guidance regarding the transfer of assets and liabilities. Russell is also the attorney for Gil Montague, and he's our attorney, and then the Sixth Town is looking to use our attorney to help them figure out the assets and liabilities. Through the Warwick transition, and when that was being navigated, there was a conflict of interest between using Russell as the attorney, because he was the attorney for both Warwick and so each party ended up going and hiring their own separate attorneys. So at this point, when we're thinking about how can our attorney best serve us and not enter into any potential conflict of interest, I'm actually recommending that we don't authorize to him providing any services on our behalf to the Six-Town Regional Planning Board. Does anyone have any questions for me or process?
It sounds logical.
Yeah, sounds logical. Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. So would anyone like to read the motion?
I'd like to make a motion to decline to authorize the Dupree
Yeah.
law offices to provide legal services to the Six-Town Regionalization Planning Board.
Second.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Go ahead. Vote.
Melissa Osborne, no.
Okay.
Stephanie Arroyo, no.
No, wait.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
You need to say yes.
Yes.
Because you
So you're
Okay, okay. I'm
Yeah.
saying
No,
yes
you
to
can say no.
decline. Is
So
that correct?
yes,
you wanna
so
decline.
yes.
So yes.
If you want to
to
say no,
decline.
you can absolutely say no.
You say to
but
decline, maybe that.
but
To decline. I would decline.
Stephanie Arroyo, yes to declining.
yes. Okay. Yes. Okay.
I know it's gonna be.
Okay. It is. Sure.
Right. Raina Dastu, yes.
Any help you?
Stephen Martin, yes. Thanks for thinking this through.
Melissa Gary, yes. Okay. Thank you.
Will you notify Russell?
And I will notify. Yes, I will send. Okay.
Oh, okay, now we're on to
Okay.
this.
So, district agreement, feedback and next steps.
Okie dokie. Folks might want to get their papers out. You have, in your packets, you've got the memo, which has a what is this? This is landscape orientation.
Yep.
And you've also got a little booklet version of the current draft of the district agreement. I'm going to see if we can get that to liven up over there. Oh, I have to, sorry. Let's see if that. No, I'm looking at the, sorry, yes, I'm looking at the screen to see if we can make it come alive. Tyler, can you help maybe? Thank you. All right. Oh, because it was, we
went to sleep.
Fell
Yes.
asleep. We were too boring.
might have been a wise choice, yeah. Okie dokie. So I want to orient you to your paper so we can walk through this. On this document, on the left-hand side is our 28. They're numbered. On your paper copy, not the copy that we sent out via the packet, but on the paper copy you have tonight, that all of the suggested edits are numbered. Yeah, let's take it out and put it back in. Do you mind seeing if you, because it's wired, it should just come on. Okay, on the left-hand side are suggested edits that have come from some town officials that have come up in conversation. On your copy of the district agreement, the one that we printed out, there are numbers handwritten in. The numbers on the left in circles correspond to the suggested edit numbers, and there are circles on the left and there are squares on the right. So if you go, just for example, on page 4 of the district, can you see how there's number 3, 4, 5?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Those are new edits that the committee did not talk about at its last meeting. There were edits that we had received but you didn't discuss. On the right, numbers 22, 21, 23, 24 in squares, those were discussed at the last meeting. So we wanted to give you a visual to indicate which ones were discussed and which ones were not. For each of the 28 suggested edits, we've given an administrative recommendation, and as we wrote in our memo, it is just that. We're sharing technical expertise. You are the decision makers. So we share our expertise, and then you all are going to talk about it. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Jordan is going to be walking through the large majority of the edits, and most of them won't. Some of them are so simple. They don't take much time at all. The first two I'm going to talk to you about, and the first one will take a few minutes, and we've even got some slides, if we can get ourselves, oh, look at that, organized. Melissa, do you want to talk about what the approval process for making revisions would look like for tonight?
Yeah, so for tonight, I think what we're going to do, I was trying to think about the cleanest way that we can do this. As we move through and we make our decision, so in the blue it says school committee decision, I'm just going to write in, what our decision is. And then at the end, we can make a motion to approve numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, whatever, in that format. So we don't have to stop and make a motion and approve, after every section.
Yeah.
Is that good? Okay. Brian, do you have what you need, the papers over there? Okay, students, you've got what you need over there. All right, let's dive in. Question number 1. And again, this might be one of the ones that takes more time.
Question 1, page 2.
Thank you. No, question 1. In the book. Okay, you do that. You do that, yeah.
In the draft.
I'm looking at number 1, edit number 1. So that's section 2, page B. Okay. This is about elections. There were a number of suggestions made, both in writing, and I recently rewatched the March 7th three-town meeting, at which many folks participated, about how school committee members get elected. It is critically important that everyone understand that there are limited options under Mass law for how regional school district committee members may be elected. Those are listed up on the screen. There's a link if you're in your electronic version of this edit document. You can go to it there. I'm going to quickly walk you through them. It is not a free-for-all. It is not a buffet. We do not get to say we would like this portion and that portion, and it doesn't work like that. So, option number 1, you could choose to put in your district agreement to elect school committee members by voters in each community. So Leiden votes for Leiden, Bernardston votes for Bernardston, Northfield votes for If you do that, the members must be, it's going to be proportional representation. Leiden, you're going to have very few members. Northfield, where's Northfield? Who else is Northfield? You're going to have more members. Bernardston, you're going to have less than Northfield, more than Leiden. It is not simple rounding. I thought it would be rounding. It is not. We've gone through this with Desi. Desi would have to calculate what the numbers would be. the school committee would have to identify which census document. That's not such a big deal. You know, you choose the federal decennial census. You choose something else. You choose a census. I looked at, I think, DOR population data for 17 years in our towns. The proportions are incredibly consistent over 17 years. So if you were to choose proportional representation, know that your numbers do not change. They're within like a percentage point and a half over 17 years. However, if you want to have it be town by town, only Bernardston is voting for, I'm just looking at you. Leiden, you're going to, you get what I'm saying? Yep. Okay. Number 2. That is you elect, oh, and number 1, it doesn't say when you vote for them. You could vote at any, you know, the district agreement could say when you vote. Number 2, it's related to what happens now, but there's no residency requirement. So number 2 is you would elect school committee members every 2 years at the fall biennial state elections. So when it's a presidential election, it's that year, and then 2 years later, it's the midterm election, and it's in the fall, and everybody shows up and votes. It would have to take place at the statewide biennial election, but there's no residency requirement. Meaning, I think this is what it means. The people who have the most votes win. What's going to happen? Okay. Number 3 is what you've got right now. You elect members with residency requirements, and the current residency requirement is by town 3 people per town at district-wide elections, so it's not Bernardston for Bernardston, Leiden for Leiden, at the biennial statewide election. Okay? Number 4, I do not understand. And I could not understand what Desi explained to me about what number 4 might mean. It says weighing the votes of committee members according to the population they represent. We'll put these slides in the online packet on the website. So I think that 4 somehow gets layered into some other thing, but it wasn't clear.
It's like, it was, yeah, like if you do 1, you might also want to consider 4. And,
you'd have to weigh the vote of every
yes,
member of the
yes,
committee.
yes,
Every
yes, yes. Number 5, this is an interesting one. Appointing committee members by locally elected officials such as school board members. And we were scratching our heads. Here, they've never seen that used in a pre-K or K through 12 district. It's for places like Frontier. I don't know if Frontier uses this, but you know those places where there's a bunch of elementary school committees? And then there's a regional school committee?
In the unions.
In the unions. So sometimes you might have the elementary school committees elect from among their membership people to serve on the secondary regional.
They serve at the-
My hand motions are being so helpful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So 1 would be, fine, you can do it by towns, but it's going to be proportional representation. 2, district-wide at the fall biennial elections with no residency. 3, what you have right now. Town, biennial elections. 4, the we don't understand the weighing the votes thing. 5, I don't mean to be flippant, but I really didn't understand it, and we looked. We tried. And the 4, the appointing committee members by other, that could be, you could say the select boards are going to appoint the whole school committee. You could do that. That they've never seen it done, again, in a pre-K through 12 district. All right? Questions about the meaning of any of the choices? Okay. So that's what we've got in place. If you want to, we've got 3, 3, 3. Everybody across the district gets to vote for anybody across the district. That comes with this package, right? Again, it's not the buffet. It's the, whatever the other thing is. And again, the current residency requirement is 3 members per town. That is strictly what you've put in the district agreement. You could choose that. You could say 9 members per town. We could have a 27 member. You could have, I don't know what else you could have. All right. I have also heard in relation to and this is from written comments, it's from what I heard at that March 7th meeting, I've heard it in other places, we should be voting in the spring town elections. That's when we should be voting for school committee. If you choose to do that, if you go town by town, again, it's proportional. I thought it would be good for you to see what the vote totals actually look like. Again, select board elections are held in the spring in the towns. School committee is held every other year, district-wide in the fall. Okay. I am going to go to the board. I miss teaching so much. All right, I'll grab a thing. Tyler, can you all see this? Is it big enough to see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would love to just, can I just say how much fun I would have doing stats? Like, I hate to say it, I took calculus. I took calculus. I don't use calculus ever, but the stats stuff, every single day, all the time. Okay. What I wanted to look at was, okay, some people in the towns are saying it should be the town thing. What do the vote totals look like? I have not identified people because it does not matter which elected official it is. Blue, light and dark is Northfield, green is Bernardston, orange is Leiden. The lighter color is the select board. Lighter is select board, lighter is select board. These are the vote totals for each of the sitting select board members and school committee members in our 3 towns right now. I did my very best. There might be an error. There is no place where you can go and get this information. So this was phone calling, this was a lot of digging. I think I have it right, but that, caveat. So on the Northfield Select Board, the currently elected folks received between 90 and 367 votes. For the school committee, and these votes on this representation are just the votes from the people who live in the same town as the school committee members. The next slide is going to show you what happened across. In Northfield, we've got 3 people. We've got a write-in. Thank you. We've got 894 votes and 1,241 votes for our school committee members from Northfield. They were elected at the statewide biennial elections. Again, these are just Northfield votes. This is apples to apples. I love Bernardston, and we're going to do a Get Out the Vote campaign in Bernardston. Because when this select board member, who received 49 votes, was elected, this member received the vote of every person who voted in that election. 49 people turned out. I'm not trying to shame anybody, but this is the difference between having the vote take place at the town elections in the spring or the statewide biennial elections. So I think this was a 1.7 or a 2.7% voter turnout. So between 49 and 80 people voted for each of the folks. And the school committee, we've got someone with 730 votes, just Bernardston residents in the last election, and then a write-in for 26. Leiden gets out the vote. Leiden has a third of the population of Bernardston, and the vote totals are about twice as high for select board as Bernardston. So between 75 and 189 votes for each of the sitting select board members, and the current school committee members have 356 votes and 17 votes. Thank you for stepping forward. Is this making sense? Okay. Just for the heck of it. Oh, I should just ask you, Jordan.
Yeah. Sorry. Should have been on that.
Okay. This is apples to oranges. I am aware of that. It felt important to show. When you start taking the actual total of votes that school committee members get across the 3 towns, the difference is even more dramatic. I mean, we have someone in Northfield, and again, it doesn't matter who it is. This is about the patterns. Who had 2,400 people across the 3 towns voting for them? 1,991, 2,389 votes up there in Leiden across the 3 towns. Jordan, would you go to the next one, please? So this is the total number of votes for 7 school committee members. All of you, these are your votes. And again, that crosses years. I just took the votes for just from the people who live in your own towns. So 7 people on school committee got that many votes. 11 people on select boards got that many votes. Will you go to the next one, Jordan? This is my last one on this. If you look at the apples to oranges, 8,500 people voted for school committee seats. Does that sound right?
Yep.
And 1849. my purpose was to demonstrate that when you write your district agreement so that the elections take place in the spring, you are more likely to have more citizens participating in the election of school committee members. No, fall.
Fall.
You understood, yeah. Questions about that?
So, thank you for that and
Very
crunching
nice.
the numbers in the presentation. Did you have any more to say on the?
No, you're gonna have to think about what you want to do.
Right. So after with the presentation, and then the admin recommendation is to, leave the draft as is, keep the current election process. So our current election process is number 3. And so we need to make the decision on whether we would want to go. I think the only other viable option for us up there would be to debate or discuss if we looked at proportional and then having to figure that out, or we stick with what we currently have. I don't think any other options would really be viable for us. And so I don't know what anybody's thoughts are on the election of school committee members, on whether we want to stay with how it is or whether we want to rework the election process.
We should keep it like it is.
Keep it like it is.
Seems a
yeah.
lot more turnout.
Yeah.
And a lot more efficient. You wouldn't have to weigh all the.
Yeah.
It's not broken.
Right. And I think for me, I really enjoy voting for members of the school committee who are going to represent the entire district, regardless of necessarily their town that they're in, right? Because what we do is, even though I'm from Bernardston and I have a lens from Bernardston, I represent all of the students that go to the school. I'm a district school committee member. And so having other citizens from other towns to vote for everyone on this committee, I think feels like a real community effort.
Yeah, and I think it also in terms of, as a representative body, we're representing the community as a whole. I represent Northfield, but I also represent the community as a whole, and I think it's meaningful to me to have that voting happen across towns, and I don't necessarily know the people in other towns as well, but it's an opportunity to ask around and get to know who they are and have the option of voting for someone who doesn't live in my town.
May I say something?
Yeah.
Yes.
Being from a small town, where if we were to look at population and, adjust representation by that, I think that, our best interest is to be, in the current situation we're in. One thing I also noted is that as we move forward, we're talking about how many students you're sending in and what your contributions are, that looking at everyone, adjusting that and having equal representation, whether you're a small town or a larger town, is a big benefit, because we all do have very, obviously, very similar needs, and our students are all headed down the same, we hope, great, path. So I agree. I think it's nice to have that representation be for a small town, a medium town, and a large town the same, because we're all very, obviously interwoven. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Okay. So it sounds like the school committee decision would be to leave the draft as is. Okay. So I'm just going to circle that and check that off for number 1.
And again, thank you for your patience. Most of the others won't take nearly
You
as
really
long.
enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that.
I worked so hard on that.
Thank you.
I kept trying to, how do I visualize this for people so that the point becomes clear?
Well, I think that's going to resonate too with the towns and the people watching, because one of the concerns was that, when they mentioned other towns voting on one town's representative, I think that when you look at a district that way and you can really bring in equal representation, the other concerns were reflected in those graphs. Who's voting? What is the voting really turning out? What are the people with the choice really doing? And it does look like the towns are working towards their representatives. And then you have a trickle in of other voters speaking up for maybe another town's representative. So it's not, a gangbusters thing that's throwing it off. It is regional representation, from what I can see from your great graphs.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, term limits. This was discussed many times by the subcommittee. I am just reporting here and giving a revised recommendation from administration. The subcommittee chose to introduce term limits. Tell me if I'm, with the idea like, folks should serve for a certain number of years, and then let's mix it up. And after speaking with Desi, after I put out a survey to every superintendent in the state, I don't know how many people I got, maybe 80. Very few districts have term limits. I think I got 5 back. That was interesting. We talked to Desi. Questions had come up from the towns, from the school committee about, well, what would happen with people who are already in? Would it be this? We got all kinds of legal guidance. In the end, we said, you know what? Leave it the way it is. Don't introduce term. That's our recommendation. Take the suggestion for term limits out. If folks in the towns are unhappy with their representation on school committee, they can vote out their school committee members. That's what we came to.
Term limits. I could argue both sides, I think. When I first moved to Bernardston and was watching school committee, I'm like, why are there not term limits? And then now I'm like, why can't we get people on the school committee? Like, what is happening? There's, and it's everywhere. It's in our, any volunteer organization, and there's this ebb and flow. And so for me, I could really go either way, whether we keep the term limits in there, whether we take it out. I really, I think where we are in this moment, it does make sense to actually remove term limits because we have vacant seats still and continue to have vacant seats. And so if we continue to have members that would like to serve, then let's keep people serving. And I guess, as Patricia said, if there's ways of voting people out if new blood comes into there, that is the beauty of the system. So I guess that's where I land. I don't know where anybody else lands.
I also have struggled with this, and I think the suggestion did come from a time where it made a lot of sense, and in the current climate, where we are struggling to fill seats, and as much as I do appreciate having new perspectives and new energy on the committee, it's very welcome. It's a very welcome. It's also hard, I think, being one of the more senior members, and I've only been on the committee for 4 years, so I really would have only done my first term at this point, and so I've benefited a lot in the past from members who had been on the school committee for a long time, and I feel like there's a nice balance of people who have the experience, and also newer people coming in and adding some fresh energy and fresh perspectives. I think I don't feel like it's needed at this point, and it's something, this new draft puts in language that is going to put this agreement on a timeline for revision and review, and if at that future date, if we feel that it's important, it's a change we can make. So that as things evolve, I think our needs might change, and I agree with striking it at this point.
Yeah. Right, because the plan is to review it every 5 years.
Mhm.
Right.
And
Yeah.
not go 20 some
Mhm.
odd. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I know we have an open seat, and I think you're absolutely right. We have a volunteer position that does require some, preparation and obviously consideration. And limiting terms right now may not be the best thing. And it comforts me to know that if you're looking at this again in 5 years, I think people with concerns about someone staying too long. And then obviously, wouldn't we have the ability as school committee members to be approached by our town, representatives, if they felt that we were, off course?
Right.
So that just, I'm assuming that Discord is okay too, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
But I think it's a wonderful thing, and people may want to join the school committee.
Right.
They could check in with their local town.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's right. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So it seems like kind of by consensus that we would go back and actually strike the draft language related to the term limits. So that means section 2B3 would be removed.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Handing over to Jordan.
Great. And I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. Obviously, those points were pretty technical, and I think some of mine are more straightforward. So obviously, if people still have questions, but I'll try to explain our rationale as quick as possible. So there's number 3, obviously, just moving along chronologically, suggestion that the closure of a school require 2/3 majority vote by residents of the town which the school is to be closed. Our administrative recommendation as well, school committee, and I think this great transition from the information Patricia showed, right? Obviously, there's big turnout. Lots of people voted for the school committee representatives to make these type of decisions on their behalf, right? The school committee is duly elected by town residents and is the appropriate body to make the decisions about closing schools. So our recommendation is that the body that's, appropriately elected by the residents should make the decision. Any questions?
I'm finding where.
It's number
So it's number 3, but where?
We don't, so for the majority, almost all, I think, of the edits suggested by the towns, we did not start redlining our draft.
Okay. So it would be within that.
It would, right.
It would go in.
There's
somewhere
language that
within.
would
Got
say,
it, got it,
you
got
all
it,
can
got it.
vote, but actually that vote doesn't count because the towns need to, the residents have to vote.
Okay. Closure of the school required 2/3
So
vote
that
by
was from the
residents.
notes from the regional.
Yep.
The public forum number 1.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Yeah, so the suggestion is that it would require votes by the residents of the towns instead of us as the school committee. But the school committee is the one who needs to make the decision about closing the schools. Okay.
I think it makes sense to keep it as is because we would be hearing from the superintendent about this 5-year projected feasibility study, whereas people who may be voting in the community may not even read the feasibility study and just go and vote.
Right.
So I think we should just keep it as is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as we would move through the process, if this was something to be done, the residents would absolutely have the opportunity to reach out to the school committee and make their voices heard. And so we would have a temperature of what the community is feeling.
And the process also includes a public forum where members of the public could provide us feedback as well. So
yeah. Okay. So I would say that school committee decision from what I'm hearing is to leave the draft as is. Okay. Okay.
Great. Number 4, pretty simple. Suggestion: strike the word savings when discussing closing a building, right? So instead, it would say, instead of cost savings, it would just say cost of closing a school building. And I know everybody has the reference there in section 4. So that to us seems fine. We can strike that word.
Okay. Do we agree with that? Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Strike savings. Check.
Tricia gave me some of the easier ones. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. I really enjoy these easier ones that do not require graphs. Continuing in section 4, number 5 is a suggestion to strike the requirement that at least one representative from each member town vote to support closure. And for that one, Patricia and I discussed it and thought that it would best be left up to school committee to have discussion about how they'd like to proceed with that recommendation.
Do you remember this addition in the subcommittee? The subcommittee felt that it would be, I think, what happened at Pearl Rose, what happened in Warwick, subcommittee wanted to make sure that at least one person in the town where a school was going to be closed, at least one school committee member there said, yeah, close the school. That's right. That was the reason for adding that language. The suggested edit was strike that.
Right. So then if that was struck, then it would just say a 2/3 in the majority of the committee.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that if you leave in with at least one representative from each to support the closure, I think that's even a higher bar to close the school, because if it's just 2/3 and we're talking about closing Bernardston, then one of us members from Bernardston would have to vote for it to do that. And if none of us from Bernardston wanted to do it, then 2/3 could be everybody else, and off we go. So, yeah, that's a high bar.
I think one person from the area represented should be, and they would be a touchstone for the community to speak through them. And I think that is very reasonable to expect that they would be, given some credence in that vote.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yes.
Again, just I feel like it flies in the face of that you just discussed every member is representing the entire community.
Yep.
So it feels counterintuitive to that.
Right.
So if you're on the committee, you're on the committee representing the community.
Right.
It doesn't matter what town you're from, and that's essentially what happened when you did
Right.
schools previously.
Right.
I don't actually remember any, how it actually fell out, but
Correct.
we've lived this life.
Right.
And so
Right.
if you're holding to the other language, I feel like it should be the same. It should match. Is
Yeah.
the
No,
person's thought on it.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, I can again, I can see either one, and I think the reason why this was put in there is so that the town or the building that was having their school closed, at least one of the members needed to be in support of it, where it didn't feel like everybody else was making a decision for that school without anybody having a voice.
I know, I think I struggled with this as well, because I feel like it is because of that lived experience and how painful it was for the communities of, where that happened. It
contradicts itself. Like you're
it-
all
it
in.
does.
You're
Yeah.
not
It does.
all in. So it's totally an emotional thing. I mean,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I was,
Yeah.
I watched it happen
On a
too.
technical,
So
this is a technical thing. So there are places in the law that require a 2/3 majority of the school committee to vote on something, and there are places where a simple majority is acceptable. It may not be incompatible
with the notion of district-wide elections of school committee members to have some places in the document that provide for more protection for the more vulnerable community. Right? I don't know that having this language means that it is inconsistent with. I think it means it's a nuanced approach to still seeking a majority and protecting the interests of the vulnerable. That would be another way to look at it. Yeah.
I can see both ways.
Right.
This is a hard decision, but I do think it would be nice to have at least one representative from each town vote to support it.
Right.
But I can also see
Right.
That's inconsistent with,
Yeah.
Are we're representing the district and not necessarily
I think
our
in this
town.
case too, it also has some relevance that the approach to closing a school is a systemic approach. I mean,
Right.
there's certainly a lot of evidence that would be presented at that. But again, I think that is why I suggested that actually, is because, we certainly don't want a certain, town to feel, underrepresented. But yes, of course, you're right, in the sense that, also we seek to,
Yeah.
It's about
Right. How it's
practicality of the district, and that's who
Yeah.
that's who you're representing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure. And it's a valid one,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got. Hey, Steve.
You can hold.
Yeah, I think we're working on that. Steve, do you have any comments to what we're discussing?
Hi.
Hi.
No, I appreciate all the deep thinking and I agree that different circumstances would feel somewhat different. So we have to work with where we are now.
Yeah. Yeah, I would actually be interested to hear from the towns on the strike requirement, because I feel like that came from previous work. So I think I'm going to put a hold on that.
Hold.
If that,
Great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I was here through that really painful several sessions where the Warwick School was closed. Leiden was anticipated by the town long before. There had been several years of discussions, whereas Warwick, it came right out of nowhere. It appeared on an agenda one night. And this new agreement has a lot more protection for something like that ever happening again.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the way that it was handled led to Warwick leaving the K through 12 district. And that was a painful process that I give Patricia a lot of credit for shepherding an amicable agreement with the town of Warwick. It was a lot of work on her part, as well as the whole committee, the Warwick Transition Committee, but Warwick felt very unheard during that process when it happened. So,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to agree, because I'm kind of stuck, having gone through that whole process. That's what got me involved with town government and the school process. It was not a clean process, and it was a short process, and it was truncated, and even our select board chair was unable to present at a public forum that was supposed to be there. So the process is more important. It's a dilemma the way that you distribute your members, because I know that members that we were talking to at the time were representing the group. And the only thing I can anticipate is, if you have a clean process, it'll make it easier for members representing the whole group to fall back on that and not say, look, I have to be the one who's voting to support to close this. They should be looking at it cleanly. If the process is clean, the process, in my opinion, strong opinion was it wasn't clean last time.
Right.
And it caused a lot of problems. And I honestly can say that had you not had Patricia, had you not had the state telling us, we have to go with you, which is what they did for at least the initial part of this process, there were an awful lot of bad feelings that we wouldn't have been here, even if it was the better choice for our older kids to be. So the process, cleaning up the process, I think, is critical. I see a lot of good things in here. Desi's part of the problem, too.
Yeah. Okay, all righty.
So I'm okay with holding that for right now.
I think
But that's all. Yeah, yeah.
And if I were representing Warwick in this discussion, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, and so we do have a meeting next Thursday, a week from today, another community forum, because there's another one on here too that I think I would be interested in hearing, bringing back to the community forum to talk about.
I think you really have to anticipate what you have presently.
Yeah.
And what would happen if.
Right.
One of your elementary schools needs to close, you're consolidating or something like that. And I
Right.
think you really want that input from the town. So
Right.
giving
Right.
that opportunity, I think would be wise.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, 6.
Number 6. Suggestion to add the language in blue to the second sentence. So after deducting the amount of state aid and general fund revenue the district is expected to receive and other general fund revenue as to include but not limited to tuition, charter reimbursement, retirement, bonds, earnings on investment, et cetera, the balance, Yep, find add language. I mean, again, I think the stuff Tom Scanlon was talking about during the audit is appropriate here. The reason, part of the reason I think, we didn't have all of those words is, as Tom indicated, it's not up to your discretion. It's you're not allowed to take what should be general fund revenue and sock it into school choice, right? Like, that would be an audit finding. But I get it. I get why people want to enumerate it. So it doesn't matter because that's all of the things that appropriately are general fund revenue. We definitely would be putting there because we're required to. So it's fine to add greater detail. Happy to do that, of course, pending the school committee decision. So our administrative recommendations, yeah, that's fine.
So adding the additional language, admin says their recommendation is fine to add language. I say, let's go with that.
Yeah,
Great.
makes
That's
sense.
easy. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay, check.
Good. A suggestion, number 7, suggestion to change the date the reports are due to the towns. The committee shall honor before February 15th each year submit an annual report for the district's prior fiscal year. What we're thinking is, since all the towns also run on a July 1st to June 30th fiscal year that similar to what we provide Leiden currently, we could get it by September 1st and be right. So for example, FY24 stuff, you'd get September 1st, 2024, FY25 stuff, September 1st, 2025. Yeah, that'd be for all the towns would be our recommendation since every town is on that same fiscal year. Yeah.
And I know that Leiden, you have it in.
Yeah, they just changed, I think, a bylaw to have the town reports come around the time that we're requesting. It's a very odd situation. The towns approach us in December, like I have to send Bernardston's by February 15th. Currently, we write these calendar year reports, but our fiscal year runs July to June. And it's odd to ask the principals, forget about the school year. Think about January 1 to January 1. We would just love, look, if the fiscal year, the school year, they're the same thing. We'll just write reports over the summer and we'll get them to you. If you don't publish them until the next February, that's fine. But could we please do them for the fiscal year, which matches the school year?
Yeah. And it looks like, so for this section, there is no date.
There's no
and
date
so
currently.
I'm assuming that this suggestion to add a date is to make it uniform, that the school district and the town knows that by this date they'll get their annual report. And so I think with your explanation, I was thinking about going back to the towns, but September 1st is way before for the previous year for February 15th. Right.
Right. So again, Leiden has changed. They voted to change their report. I've not understood, and this is not a judgment. I just don't understand why the towns do a calendar year when their fiscal year is a calendar year report when they've got a fiscal year that's July to June. So again, as you say, our draft had no date. The towns put in February 15th, and that got us thinking, well, wait, why would we have it when Leiden has changed their bylaws to say, don't do that?
Right.
We thought, well, wait, we could fix a problem here for us. We'll just write it over the summer. You can have it. If you don't want to publish it right away, that's fine. But you've got your report, and it's done.
Yeah.
So we discuss with the towns.
Yeah, that makes sense. Discuss with the towns. I'm wondering if since tonight we're essentially going to be making changes to the draft to then represent a draft with the changes, that maybe we consider adding September 1st in the draft and then having that discussion with. I'm wondering if that would be something that we would say, yep, we understand you want to put a date, but how does this sound? How does September 1st sound? And kind of talk about changing it that way.
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
Does that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. Number 8.
Good. Yes, lucky number 8.
Is it?
Well, in China.
In China. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
So the suggestion add the language that the district shall identify and recommend to the member towns capital projects in excess of $10,000 for Pioneer Valley Regional School, so the member towns can include these capital costs as separate articles in their annual town meeting warrant. The guidance we received from DESI is those capital projects can't be added as separate articles because you need to vote on the whole assessment, the whole budget. It can't be that, for example, you vote down the capital projects at PVRS but approve the budget. They can't be. It has to be one thing you're voting on. So meaning the operating and capital assessments together. So it can't be that you vote down capital. So our recommendation is leave the draft as is, because otherwise we would potentially create a disagreement that conflicts with the existing law.
I'd like to add some additional backup to that. So I'm looking at my colleague Brian Keir over there. So I did a little cruising on the Town of Bernardston website, and I went to the Finance Committee webpage, where they have nice job on the new website, by the way. We need to follow your lead. The Finance Committee in Bernardston lists a number of key documents. One of them is the Finance Committee Handbook, which is produced by the State Association of Finance Committees. And on page 14, and again on 14 and 15, they cite the same guidance. So this notion that it has to be one amount is coming from DESI. It is also coming from the State Association that the Bernardston Finance Committee publishes on its own webpage. Wanted to clarify that.
I mean, if state law says, yes, Brian, I'll recognize.
Yeah, that's what that.
Right, that's what the comment. Right, that's
Right,
yeah.
just Pioneer. Yep, correct. Okay, so let's not conflict with the law. So I would say that we will leave the draft as is. Yes, consensus? Okay, yes, consensus, check. Okay, 9.
Right. So suggestion that the draft return to having the district ask towns to put capital project on the town's warrant. Our recommendation, again, keeping with what we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, school committee is the representative body best positioned to determine which capital projects are needed to operate the schools. So the recommendation is to leave the draft as is, which would mean that the district, similar to how we do at PVRS, assesses for capital projects in the elementary schools, just like it is at PVRS, but that it would be happening at Bernardston and Northfield, and then the towns would be assessed for those projects, and it would be part of a single budget vote.
Okay. so we've spent a lot of time kind of talking about this as a subcommittee, I remember.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons that we were doing this, or the capital projects, as part of the full budget, was to have a much more open and transparent conversation with the towns as the budget's being developed. So the capital projects are known. It's not a surprise capital project that comes to be. So how we listed it in here, from being on the subcommittee, I would support to leave the draft as is. Anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the work that was done on the subcommittee level to really delve into this issue, and I would support that as well.
Okay. Anything? Yes? Okay. Okay, so I think the consensus is to leave draft as is for number 9.
All right, number 10. So this one's a bit more technical, but I think it can still be handled relatively quickly. So the what we want to do here is add 2 subsections in section 6B2 to be specific about returning money for capital projects in the town-owned elementary buildings, because that is different than the district-owned PVRS building. So we wanted to make sure that when talking about using a different process returning money, it was specifically in the town-owned elementary buildings. And those 2 subsections would read, if the cost of the capital project is ultimately less than the capital assessment for that project, the district will refund the difference at the latest within 60 days of receiving the Division of Local Services certification of excess and deficiency letter in the year following the fiscal year during which the capital project occurred. And section 4, if the cost of the capital project is ultimately more than the capital assessment for that project, the district will assess the member towns the difference in the year following the fiscal year during which the capital project occurred, based on the method described in subsection B2 of this section. So, again, this is great. We had the audit presentation. We talked about some of this stuff. So, right, like, when a capital project at PVRS is, for example, under budget, right, that's a general fund expense. So what happens is that just goes into excess and deficiency, and there's already an established process for when you're statutorily required to return money to the towns, right? It's when you exceed the 5% threshold of your previous year's general fund budget. So if capital projects are higher or lower, we already have a method for handling that, right? If they're lower, you know, more money is going to close to excess and deficiency at the end of the year, and or if they're over budget, you know, we're going to have to do a budget transfer, figure out some method, just like we do in any other general fund expense account, right? If you know, we have to hire an extra teacher, you know, we have to figure that out. You don't go back to the towns and say, hey, can we have more money because we hired another teacher, right? You need to figure it out. And so that's what would happen with capital projects at this building, right? We have an established mechanism. Whereas at the town-owned buildings, obviously, we need to establish a different mechanism because, for example, if Northfield does a capital project and it comes in under budget, they don't want that money to close to excess and deficiency, right? Because then all 3 towns own excess and deficiency, right? So you don't want at the end of the year to close there. What you want, if I'm Northfield, I say, oh, it's under budget. That's great. Give us our money back, right? Because it's just our money for our building. It's not district building district money. So that's what. So that's what we wanted to make clear is if it's the only time we need a specific mechanism for a refund or an additional assessment is when it's in a town-owned building. So that's what we did. We added 2 subsections and think that. Brings greater clarity and possibly the original intent is better made clear.
Desi reviewed this.
Yes, and Desi reviewed this and said, yep, that makes sense. You know, that's not all they said, but that was the concluding sentence.
Okay. So the suggestion from the towns was to add these 2.
No, this is Jordan.
This is,
The two
Oh.
subsections?
this is Jordan's suggestion.
That's why I was
Yeah,
so
this is-
effusive in my praise
yeah,
for
this
these
is-
ideas.
This is
a Jordan
sorry.
suggestion.
This is a Jordan suggestion.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, we should mark that. I'll mark that
That's okay.
on the next iteration.
Yep.
So then Jordan agrees with himself.
Not always. Not always.
The administrator.
Often disagrees with himself, especially when discussing parenting strategies.
So we would include these two new subsections. Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Yes, in this
We've hit
instance,
the
I do agree
2
with
hour mark,
myself.
So, okay. All right. Okay. So adding the new two subsections, sure. Does anyone have any feelings why we wouldn't? I mean, again, we're going to edit this draft and then put it back out and then continue. So,
It sounds
okay.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes
Okay.
sense.
So yes, Jordan will agree.
Alrighty.
All right, good. Number 11. So a suggestion, not for me, to strike manage and pay and substitute with notify and coordinate with member towns. And a second suggestion to strike all of second sentence in items 1 and 2. Essentially, this is a suggestion to return to how we're doing things now. And I think, as previously stated, the administrative position is, the school committee is the elected body to run the schools and make decisions on behalf of the schools that impact our students and staff and the operation of the schools. And if there's disagreement on how the school committee is doing that work, there's a mechanism for changing that representation, right? Kick them out. On the other hand, if the town residents support how school committee is doing business, they'll continue to elect people, and so we think it's reasonable, and obviously the school committee has the closest working relationship with all the people who have the most in-depth knowledge about what's happening in the schools and what's needed to continue to make them great. So our recommendation is, leave it as is, and the capital projects in the town-owned buildings will be assessed like capital projects in this building are.
Can you give an example of what an emergency capital cost would be?
Yeah. I remember taking some of the courses to become a school business person, and the guy was talking about how he came to work one morning and a pipe, burst in the wall, and it was like one of his first days. He's like, so I also had to buy new shoes. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, right, you have to replace the pipe and all the drywall and all the things that got damaged in the wood floor beneath it. No one planned for it, and it's once you do all that, it's $75,000. So I think that's kind of one of those examples where there's significant damage. Obviously, if it's under $5,000, that's going to be maintenance, right? Like, oh, something broke. That happens all the time, and that's why we have a maintenance budget. But if it's a $75,000 project and you're putting in new walls or new floors, well, that one, it is a capital project by definition, and nobody planned for it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
I can't call it.
Because it's happened locally, water and wind.
Yeah.
Water and wind.
Yeah.
Those are the unexpected.
The W's.
Yeah.
Orange lost the whole wing of Dexter Park School because
Yeah.
of a frozen water pipe,
Right.
steam pipe. Froze, then it steamed over the Christmas vacation for 2 days. The only 2 days of the year they don't check the water. And they lost the whole wing of the school.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's
Yep.
rough.
you think of Springfield when they had this tornado come through, they lost
Yeah.
Yep.
building. So wind and
Yeah.
water are big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bathroom fire that triggers the sprinklers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I would think in an emergency situation that a capital project needs to be done, we kind of need to manage and get that done, right? I do like how this has been presented in the district, how it's written in the district agreement. So I would say from just organizational to get what needs to be fixed done in the emergency basis, that we keep the manage and pay, and we leave the draft as is. But
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
so the suggestion would say, so the district shall manage and pay for emergency capital projects that were not budgeted. The suggestion is that it would change to the district shall notify and coordinate with the member towns for emergency capital projects that were not budgeted. So that's the difference. So, leave it as is.
Okay.
Leave it as is.
Yep.
Consensus.
And this is a you suggestion.
Oh, yes,
This is a
right, this
Jordan
is good. And this is very small, so this is a me suggestion, so delete from Roman numeral 2 the words and parentheses 3 of this section. The reason is that this is occurring in section 6B3. It's like a circular reference, right? It's not B3, it's that we want B2. So my recommendation is that the reference is incorrect and should only be B2. It should only be referencing B2, which defines how capital projects will be assessed. So that is my recommendation.
Desi said yes on this too.
Oh, yes, and Desi also agreed that that made sense.
Okay. Delete incorrect reference makes sense? Yes. Okay. All right. Good. I was looking at our students and looking at what we're doing, and I glanced at the agenda, and really, if you have other things that you could be doing, please save your, yes,
Go.
yes, like feel free. Yeah,
You are welcome
yeah.
to
So,
stay, but yeah, but
home.
please,
You-
it's,
yeah,
you're more
it
than
is totally
welcome
fine.
to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. There you go.
Okay.
Good.
There
We're
we
gonna
go.
move it along.
Yep. And this is another suggestion from me. Section 6B5, I think we should delete completely now because since we've already recommended the changes to add subsections Roman numeral 3 and 4 in section 6B2, section 6B5 no longer has a purpose.
Redundant, yeah.
So I think we could just delete that out of there. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Consensus. Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. We're almost there.
Moving right
Right.
along. We're moving right
Yeah.
along, people.
Exciting.
We're gonna get through this. This had to happen.
Yes.
Number 14, suggestion to, this is not my suggestion, back to, these are from town suggestions, strike second paragraph and 3 bullets from subsection D. Our recommendation is that actually the 3 bullet points are necessary to clarify the language of the subsection
Oh yeah.
in the recommended change to section 5B1 addresses this concern. So in section 5B1, if you can remember, that's adding the other revenues, right? So we're going to deduct off everything that's on the general fund revenue, whether it be charter school reimbursement or earnings on investments. So once you add all that, that addresses this issue. And then the amount actually being assessed to the towns is minimum local contribution and above minimum local contribution. So it's just kind of how it's always been. That's how the assessments are going to work. So we're taking off all other forms of revenue prior to assessing the towns. But once we do, it's minimum local contribution and above minimum local. So that's our suggestion is, yep, we got to leave the draft as is.
I actually found it to be helpful
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the bullets.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I thought that so I would agree with leaving the draft as is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
'Cause it doesn't change what
It doesn't right. It doesn't.
what's stated above. It just clarifies, makes it more simplifies it.
All right. Number 15. Section 6F, suggestion that capital costs should be assessed separately. I think we've discussed this one, but obviously we wanted to address every single suggestion and be thorough. So it's the same thing that.
Same citation.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Towns should not have separate vote for capital costs, as it would be in conflict with existing laws.
Right. Right. So leave draft as is. Okay.
Number 16 is similar. Suggestion to change the end of the last line of the first paragraph from 2/3 of the member towns to all member towns. That change is not supported by state law. We can't do it because state law prevents us from requiring a greater threshold than 2/3. So a unanimous vote would not be allowed. So our administrative recommendation is leave it as is. Do not conflict with the law.
Okay. Do not conflict with the law. School committee agrees.
Yeah, we agree.
Okay. All right.
This is interesting.
Number 17. These are actually really thematically similar, all three of them. So it's a similar theme. And I understand, people have suggestions, but after vetting, so the suggestion to strike the language that would allow the school committee to incur debt under MGL Chapter 71, Section 16D. So, basically, what we're talking about here is that there's two different ways to vote to incur debt. One provided by Chapter 71, Section 16D, and then one provided by Chapter 71, Section 16N. And what the suggestion would be is, nope, you only can do it by the Chapter 71, Section 16N way. But you can't take away, a right that's specifically, or not, something
an authority.
that's right, an authority that's specifically enumerated in law. So you'd have to make a new law. So our suggestion is to leave the draft as is.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Leave draft as is.
All right. I think Tricia's
Oh, I'm on this one. Yeah. I got the really hard one. Number 18, suggestion in the first line, change the to all. So instead of when a majority of the member towns, say when a majority of all member towns, at first we thought, okay, fine. And then we thought, actually, no. That change would be inconsistent with the references to majority votes in all other sections of the document. So our recommendation is to leave the draft as is.
The first, do all, when a majority of the member towns, of all member. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That makes sense. From that at all. Okay.
Be consistent.
I have the next one too.
Yes.
Okay. Okie dokie, number 19. Let me orient myself. Require a unanimous vote of member towns, not 2/3 of member towns, to allow a new town to join the district. So I did a word search, and unanimous is nowhere else in the document. And I believe that there's no other all the towns have to vote on something anywhere else. So it seemed it would be inconsistent with other vote thresholds. So our administrative recommendation is leave the language as is.
Require unanimous vote, member, 2/3. Okay. I would say 2/3.
Was Stephanie thinking something though?
That's a little bit of a mind bender, but this is going to be reviewed, so we can discuss that further.
Yeah. Correct.
I'll
So
let my mind be straight.
Leave as is. And again,
I want to make sure the concept. So the draft says for a new town to come in, 2/3 of the current member towns have to say, "Yay, come in."
Right.
The suggestion is make everybody say,
Right.
"It's okay." Okay.
Yes. No,
Right.
I do.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Number 20. Oh, so there's and it was really helpful to have people remind us of the whole, we're going to review this every 5 years. There's a language that sets up a regional agreement advisory committee. And the suggestion is add towns as bodies that this committee reports to. And this is sort of similar to other suggestions that have been made, the gist of them. And again, we feel the school committee is the duly elected body charged with managing the schools. And the language already provides for a representative of each town who is not a member of the school committee to be appointed by the select boards to the committee. So it seemed to us that was good representation. And that you should leave the draft as is. That was our.
Yeah. Yeah. Thoughts? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Consensus, leave draft as is.
Jordan's going to take over for that last page, which is numbers 21 through 28. And again, these were all discussed at the
November
public
26th.
forum number 1.
Right. And I think that these are the ones that we talked about the last school committee meeting too.
No, last school committee
meeting, sorry.
Yeah, last school committee.
No,
And these are the numbers that are in squares in the right-hand margins.
Yep.
So
So
you go
it
back
starts
to
on page 4
page-
of the district agreement.
Yeah, and they're out of order.
Yeah.
And they're out of order.
That's okay.
That's okay.
No, this is great. Patricia's
This is
notes and the
so
margins
helpful.
were super
Yeah.
good for me to review it
Thank
as
you.
well last night. Right, these one we had a lot of conversations with Desi about as
Oh.
well. The ability of a town to override school committee vote to close the school by holding a vote at town meeting, and the town be allowed to keep the school open, and they would bill the town for salaries and benefits. Yeah, and Desi said, yeah, we've heard of that kind of thing. We've never seen it be able to happen. Long and the short of it is, yeah, that could be super messy. We don't necessarily know how you do it. Right, I mean, it also introduces I'm just thinking, right, it's my job to think about, from a financial perspective, a level of financial risk, right?
Mhm.
Like, you're trying to calculate kind of to the penny, right? Because you don't want to take on any financial responsibility for that building, every single cost. And yeah, I mean, I think that it might be hard to estimate, to the penny exactly what it would cost and ultimately make sure you calculate all those expenses correctly. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of one of those things. I'm maybe more conservative in my approach, but if something, if Desi says, well, we've never heard of it ever being done, but sure, you can try it out. I think, maybe not. It's kind of like jumping off of a really high thing into water. You're like, who wants to go first? Not me.
Right. Yeah. That was highly technical.
Highly technical. It was swimming reference.
Yeah, I think it would just be
A nightmare.
a nightmare
Very
to manage.
complicated,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I would suggest that we just leave draft as is. And so basically, some of these that we've gone through, we went through last time. So
But
we
now
should
you're
be able
making decisions.
we're making
Oh, you-
decisions.
Yep.
Correct. Formal decisions. Okay, 22.
All right, 22. The district holds a public forum in the town in which school might be closed, and to increase the length of notice before the
Alright.
meeting is held from 2 weeks to 30 days. That's
And we
seems
said
fine.
yes.
Yeah.
Draft 30 days, yes.
Number 23. Provide greater detail about condition of school before it's returned to town. So the town provides some language like in broom condition, I believe.
Yep.
That seems reasonable. We will, if this ever happened, be in great shape. Is that okay with the school committee?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Yep.
Number
Yep.
24, a suggestion to change the length of time that the district will pay 50% of fuel and electricity costs from 12 months to 3 years, and to add the phrase, or the building is repurposed. Desi's guidance again was, a year seems like, pretty kind of stretching it. Like, that's the most we would approve. It's generous. 3 years, unlikely to, be approved by Desi. So, what's the school committee think?
Yeah, I am in full support of leaving it as is, and not to extend it for 3 years worth of pay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, consensus.
Yes.
Yes, leave as is. Okay. 25.
Great. 25, there were some suggestions about budget dates. Obviously, the town has certain requirements to get information from the school committee about potential assessments, and so we wanted to be receptive to that idea and give ourselves more time, because obviously, this time of year, it seems like, oh man, the budget, budget kind of needs to be done. and we have almost no information that's reliable, besides who's going to work here. And we have our salary scales, but, every other piece of information, whether it be cost of insurance, what the state's going to give us for money, all of that, zero information at this point. And so the reason I mentioned that is we would love it to not be February 15th. So we have a compromise solution, school committee budget vote. This is a small typo, so that should be the school committee budget vote. And it is correct in the actual district agreement document.
Yeah.
That date is correct. It's just a tiny thing. There's like 1 million words in one typo. You did great work. School committee budget vote on March 10th.
Thank you.
Send the assessments to towns within 21 days rather than a full month. So the towns would still get the assessments by March 31st, which I think is the date that they were saying was kind of a latest date for them. So we were hoping that this would, we were thinking this would be a great compromise where we both got to where we need to be. We have a little more time, so we have more information, more time to work with it in developing a budget, and the towns have their information in a timely fashion as well. So school committee has a decision.
Yes, dates, yes.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yes, okay.
All right. Section 6A in the definition of capital costs include in excess of 5,000 and language about purchasing equipment. Strike the word extraordinary. Our recommendation is yes, do that. $5,000 is the definition of capital costs by DESI. So
Okay.
we
Yes.
can't make them higher.
So update draft is indicated. Yep. Yes.
Good.
Okay.
Related to transportation reimbursement, number 27 is suggestion that to include net of state reimbursement for prior year transportation expenses. Yep, discussed with DESI. They agree that language is great,
Okay.
and they support it.
Great. Okay. Lessing.
Great.
Last one.
Why was this paragraph removed?
Oh, right.
put it at the end.
Special funds.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. School committee opted to remove the language as it could result in inequities
Right.
among students from different towns, right? And just about the real situation, right? Bernardston has an account for this purpose, but there's no money, and other two towns do not have special funds accounts. So it seems to be, at the moment, a moot point.
Yep, absolutely. Okay.
Wow. Well done.
All right, so we just went through 28 suggested edits. Nice job. And there is only one.
Jim goes, it's 2 years worth of work.
Yeah. Only one that we have a hold on, which is number 5. Everything else
Hold.
is
There's a,
there's a affirmative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Leaving the draft as is or fine,
And
or
number
changing.
7, did we not say that we would,
change to September 1.
So
if the towns,
no, so I had said let's change it to September 1 in the draft.
okay.
So we'll change it to September 1 in the draft when we represent, and then have the
And explain
discussion.
it.
Yeah, and explain it then.
Okay. Well, I did say discussing, so
Yeah.
after it's changed.
So
Yeah.
would, to help me technically get the next steps accomplished, because there's the meeting next week.
Yep.
Would the school committee potentially be voting now to say, to direct the superintendent, make the changes in the draft? Any changes indicated tonight, make them, and prepare a new draft that reflects the changes discussed tonight.
Yes.
Yes.
That is, yes.
That's
Okay, you
So.
vote that, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yep, so the vote or the motion would be to, update the draft.
with the
you.
presented changes, with the exception of number 5.
I would say, yeah, everything that you agreed to
All
tonight,
the-
I
all
will
the
update
changes that
if you
the
I would
committee-
update, so number 5 would
So-
be included. Everything you agreed to, I'll produce an updated draft.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, so we will, I can try to make that motion.
Right.
We will direct the superintendent to update the draft based on the changes that were accepted in the discussion tonight.
Yes, okay.
Second.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Hearing none.
Melissa Osborne, yes.
Stephanie Arroyo, yes.
Raina Dastu, yes.
Stephen Martin, yes.
Melissa Gary, yes. Whew, nice job,
Nice
team.
job, people.
Yeah.
Nice job, team.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
We're getting good at
Yes.
this. We've been through enough of these processes that, thank you, we're getting good at this.
Yeah, it's very, it's a lot of work.
okey-dokey.
Appreciate the organization.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, ideas come when I'm walking the dog.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, no, we're going to put numbers. Every edit is going to be numbered. Because that way we could keep talking about, okay.
Thanks,
wait,
Ellie.
Am I doing IEP?
Yeah, thanks,
stuff?
Ellie.
Am I talking about the IEP?
Yeah,
Okay.
so IEP is next.
The school committee received a memo from our colleague, Director of Student Services, Nancy Parlaclosh. As you remember, in September, the administrative team presented the major initiatives and highlights of the year to come. And when we did that, we indicated to the school committee when we would update you on progress. So this is an accountability measure. We said Ms. Parlaclosh would be updating you around this time of year on the implementation of the new IEP, and I think it's going well. Ms. Parlaclosh began with staff last year attending trainings on the introduction of the new IEP. We are implementing the new IEP. There are ongoing sessions that she's got with different special educators and related service providers. So from my perspective, from what I see and hear, this is a big deal. These are good improvements to the IEP. And this is the student's individualized education program for students who have special needs. This is not a one and done kind of thing, and we're moving along.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. You're up. Strategic investments.
Strategic investments.
Thank you. Right, so strategic investments. So on our school committee meeting at October 26, 2023, it was a very exciting meeting. A lot of stuff happened. We made a commitment, the school committee made a commitment to invest $615,000 in curriculum, PVRS facility and staff compensation, and return a boatload of money to the towns, $742,000. And what we wanted to do now is provide you an update on what have we been doing. How are we accomplishing those goals of making those investments? Good news, yes. So, right, and these are in super important areas, so it's something we're very excited for and proud of that we've begun the process of doing this. So, curriculum, ton of professional development in math and responsive classroom. So that's over $20,000. So the math is for elementary educators, responsive classroom. That's district wide, right?
Responsive classroom is elementary,
Just
district-wide,
elementary
yeah.
as well. Additional investments in elementary ELA, elementary social emotional curriculum, middle high school and high school math textbooks, and I know there's more that needs to be done there, so there's going to be more invested there, but already $15,000 put into those areas. And we anticipate an additional $100,000 in the next 18 months, give or take. And to continue the process of curriculum renewal, we want to continue to provide the best resources to our faculty, because it will only make them better, right? PVRS facilities, renovation of the auxiliary gym, that was a total of $65,000. That process started basically at the end of the summer of 2023, commenced by spring of 2024. Everything's going great. I think it's a space that I think district-wide people are proud of, right? People come through it and they're like, hey, our school has this, you don't. Similar to the New York City trip. It doesn't have to be a bragging zero sum, but sometimes it's good to be proud, and we want to provide, tangible stuff for our students to be proud about.
It is very impressive.
It is. Neat.
It is very impressive, and I've seen kids who, my own included, who I never thought would be interested in going to the gym, who have been going to the gym.
Isn't that great?
It's really great.
Yeah.
It's really great.
That's great.
It's a beautiful space.
And $65,000 of stuff is one thing, but I think that $65,000 of stuff wouldn't necessarily be worth anything if we didn't have great people as well. So, Nick Adams, having an experienced person who knows what they're doing, it's more than just the stuff, right? It's having a great person who interacts well with our students, right? So that's what really, I think, makes that investment worthwhile, and help choose the stuff, right? Knew it was functional, and it wasn't like I did a shopping spree. When you consult with somebody who actually knows exactly what they want and why. Also, to be, you could easily get like an off-the-shelf $300,000 solution that wouldn't have been as good as functional. Knew exactly what he wanted, how to get it at good prices, and so I think that is another reason that's so valuable.
And that's a community space too, right? Adults.
We haven't opened it up for the
No.
towns. We thought we would at this point, but eventually, yeah.
And again, our having the financial wherewithal and reserves has also allowed us to do capital projects at PVRS without having to assess anyone, right? So the capital projects at PVRS, including the interior door project, which we now have commissioner approval for, and will be happening soon, because I know as Patricia referenced at the beginning of our meeting, when our safety partners come in, we want to make sure that every door is locks well and is safe in event of a situation where, like, a lockdown. We're that project's going to come. We did carpet installation over the summer, and related, although not necessarily a facilities strategic investment, right? Our food service balance allowed us to put in a new freezer cooler in this building, again, without having to assess anybody, because we had the money on hand. That's great. And so our facilities are constantly being enhanced as a result of having the reserves and good financial management. Staff compensation, as the recorder has reported on widely, we had successful bargaining with both of our support union, PVSP, and our certified staff, PVREA. And so staff compensation, how does that happen? One of the big things was a bonus we just paid out in October, $1,000 to not just our members of collective bargaining units, but all director level staff. So principals, director of finance, superintendent, director of teaching and learning, director of student services didn't receive the $1,000 bonus. Everyone else did. And so that's great to be able to provide key members of our organization with additional compensation in the form of a bonus, and as I was referencing before, new collective bargaining agreements that provide cost of living adjustments that the district hadn't been able to provide before. And they're both 3-year agreements, right? So it's not a 1-year cost of living adjustment and who knows what's going to happen in the future, right? It's 3 years of certainty to have cost of living adjustments that I think we can all be proud of, right? Schools are people business, whether it's educating people or employing people. They're our biggest asset, and so it feels really good to be able to reward people with really high cost of living adjustments. And in addition, our people who are newly joining our organization having minimum salaries, right? For both our support union and our certified staff. So a minimum of $20 for our support staff and a minimum of $52,000 for our certified staff. Which are huge jumps from what the minimums were before, because again, this is really important work, really hard work. We want people to have a base level compensation. It's not just a cliche, but obviously the work everyone does here is never going to be able to be compensated appropriately, because we'd all be looking like Elon Musk. But we want to do as much as we possibly can. And we'd make better decisions with our money also. And these those investments are going to be $100,000 each year moving forward. So right, we're very far along on the $615,000 investments. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, personnel update.
Yep.
Would you look at that? Would you look at the personnel update, please? How few positions there are on the personnel update. There might be one new one
Great.
I'm not sure. District resource nurse, welcoming Casey Neff, and I am so excited about our new director of teaching and learning. I think Zevi is going to be a game changer for the district. My goodness, that this is a stellar hire. I wish she could be here right now, and it's okay. Anyway, any questions about the incredibly short
Nope.
list of?
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Enrollment. We're down a few students this month. We did, and I share this in the interest of transparency. We did a review with admin team, maybe last week, and Dottie Bocon, who is our wonderful data manager, came and met with us. And we found that we need to do a little improving of, we needed to improve, we need to make sure that when kids leave the district, we get them into Redeker the next day as having left the district. So there have been a few, so I think there was a little cleanup this month, which is why there are a couple extra kids. It's not a huge issue, but I share that, we will be transparent with you. We need to make sure that we're doing just a teeny bit better job on that one. When I think about enrollment, I think about Winchester. We are still in conversations with them. Their process is ongoing, and I will let you know once they have told us what the next steps would be in that.
Great. Other business not anticipated by the chair. I do not have any other business.
Could you give me this back?
Upcoming meetings. So there's a special school committee meeting next Thursday at 6 p.m. in the Kiva. And then our next regularly scheduled school committee meeting is January 9th, New Year, at 6 o'clock here. So before we go into executive session, because we will adjourn from there, I just want to wish everyone a great holiday season. Enjoy time with your family and friends. Get some much needed rest, please. So, yeah. Yep. Okay.
I believe it will be, I'll triple check.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Sure.
we're gonna, okay.
No problem.
It would be helpful if it is.
Okay.
Yep.
So I will read the motion for us to enter into executive session according to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 22F(G) for approval of executive session minutes on November 20th, 2024, and not to return to open session at the end of executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, great. All right, and we do need to do a roll call.
Melissa Osborne, yes.
Stephanie Arroyo, yes.
Rita Dastu, yes.
Stephen Martin, yes.
Melissa Gary, yes. Okay.
Just,
Oh, I didn't
sign
say.
afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
It's just you.
Yep.
Leave this stuff, it can go